Friday the 13th, Carnival of Maniacs, Chapter 1. Irwin pressed down on the gas as the gleaming 18-wheeler began its long, slow drag up the hill. The gradient at Denver Rise wasn't much to shout about, but it went on for a couple of miles in one continuous haul, so it never hurt to give the four-stroke a little more juice. When the engine struck the right note, Irwin snatched at the manual gear shift, causing the high cab to lurch with the sudden bite of transmission. The gentle rocking brought on a smirk. What with the punch of the gears and all the bumps along the stretch of road, the driver knew exactly what he was doing. Because the more his truck rattled and rolled, the more he felt the girl's legs brush against the denim on his thigh, and she was wearing black fishnet pantyhose. You see, Bill Irwin was on day 2 of his weekly run to a chemical plant over in East New Jersey. There he'd fill his trailer with some good, honest produce of the Garden State, and then turn around and bring the shipment back to a distribution center someplace near his hometown in Illinois. And that's what he did 50 weeks of the year, 52 when they let him. Trucking was good. It paid well, and Bill enjoyed the freedom of driving through hundreds of miles of countryside. He knew the journeys would go quicker if he kept to the interstates. But then he wouldn't get to see pretty areas like this remote lake region in Wessex County. There was so little traffic on these roads. He could relax and have a smoke or play some music. If he was real careful, he could even sneak himself a beer. Sure, he spent most of his time alone, and that's not everybody's bag, but Bill enjoyed his own company. If he ever did get lonesome, he could pull up at a diner or a gas station or talk to some hitchers like the 3 kids he picked up late this afternoon. He'd found them outside a general store some miles back, and they'd been striking out big time all day. No one wanted to stop for 3 high school goths dressed head to foot in black. They were just way too weird. But it was precisely because of the way they looked, well, one of them at least, that Irwin had put on the brakes and offered them a ride. He knew 4 up front would be a tight squeeze, but that was all a part of the game plan. You just don't see black fishnet pantyhose in Wessex County. In fact, you don't see any black in Wessex County outside of Burial. And the girl who was wearing them, sweet Jesus, she was hot. Her boyfriend, some loudmouth who called himself Trick, had tried to get on board first, but Irwin had pushed him back down and reminded him of his manners. Ladies first, son. Give the kid his due. He'd apologized and stepped aside to let the girls on. That was, girls, plural. 2 of them. The tall, slim goddess with the fishnet legs and some dumpy little pig with a face like a pitcher of phlegm. Guess which one Irwin helped up first. The trucker had reached his hand down to the pretty young lady like he was the perfect gentleman. He'd even formally introduced himself. The name's Bill Irwin. Pleased to meet you, honey. In return, the punk bride of Dracula had lit his fire with the funeral parting of her lips, and told him to call her Zemal. Then she snuggled up real tight beside him. Zemal. What kind of a fucking name was that? But then, what kind of kids were these? No transportation, stuck out some pokey old store in the ass end of New Jersey. They'd just been sitting in the dirt, baking in the early evening sun like 3 barbecue briquettes. Black hair, black clothes, black makeup, black everything. Even the polish on the boys' nails. Oh, and don't forget, the boys' eyeliner. Regardless, Irwin was happy enough to have them along. Even though these 3 charcoals of the whatever generation had been hitting him with some serious adolescent tude, it meant he could sit by the tall girl with the legs. For their part, the kids' gratitude totally clashed with their undead image. Trick, in particular, was suffering from verbal diarrhea. Despite letting the girls on first, the boy somehow got himself planted on the other side of Zemal. And over the last 10 minutes, he hadn't shut up once. Bill wondered if he was high on something. But the other girl, Glow, had hardly said a word. The grumpy little stump butt had just crushed herself in between Trick and the passenger door, and had spent the entire journey staring out the window. Fortunately, conversation wasn't Bill's main concern. He shot a glance down at Zemal's thigh. It was long, slim, and crisscrossed with webbing. Bill had to call on sheer strength of will not to place an oily hand on her leg. Just then, Zemal turned and caught him. She was wearing a black padded jacket with black feathers on the collar and cuffs. It shone like it was made of satin. Underneath, she wore a black tank that had been torn along the hem to display her pale, narrow midriff. The tank had a print on it, which Irwin quickly turned his attention to in a bid to play a save. "What's that on your t-shirt?" he croaked in a voice trained at the tobacco school of elocution. Slapnut? The boy sitting on the other side of Z-Mall howled with laughter. Slapnut? Trick sputtered. Slapnut? Then all three of them broke up, even Glow. Irwin scowled and returned his eyes to the road. He didn't see what was so goddamn funny. But they just kept laughing and repeating Slapnut over and over. He was about to tell them to quit it when Z-Mall raised a hand up to her beautiful, kissable, BJ-able black lips, then pulled back her jacket to show him the full logo. Then Trick spoke up. It's Slipknot, stupid! Z-Mall could have said almost anything and Irwin would have melted. But Trick was only just getting started. Hey, Slappy! Roared the boy through his tears. How's it going, Slappy? Irwin shook his head. Don't smudge your mama's mascara, boy. Trick writhed in his seat. This was getting funnier by the second. He mimicked the threatening lowness of Irwin's voice. This ain't like dust and crops, Slappy! And then, Slappy, I am your father. Seeing the cloud descending over Irwin's alcohol-creased brow, Glow swiftly nudged her friend in the ribs. Come on, Trick. Trick, hit the mute button now. Z-Mall laid a soothing hand on the trucker's knee. Ignore him, she said playfully. He's only jealous because you want to hump my legs. The truck swerved, making Trick laugh even louder. Slappy's gone cardiac. If you think it's guilt, press 1. Sexual arousal, press 2. Slapman, you're a dirty old fuck, aren't you? Irwin tugged at the wheel and got the semi back under control. He shouldn't have lost it in the first place, but the boy was right. He'd been made to look like a pervert by a girl not even half his age. How old was she? 15? 16? Sure, she was over 6 foot. All the girls are these days. But Jesus Christ, she was probably illegal. If Bill wasn't careful, Z-Mall could land him in a whole world of trouble. Hey, honey, he growled. The last thing I want is to look at your legs. Oh, that's right, she smiled mischievously. I forgot. It's my vest you're interested in. Z-Mall laughed and suddenly lifted the hem of her tank to expose a black leather bra wrapped tight around her boobs. Trick cheered her on. The boy didn't seem to mind that his girl was putting out for the trucker. Glow, however, groaned and sunk her head in her hands. Bill was beginning to understand why the half-pint always looked so miserable. Z-Mall cupped her leather-clad breast in her hands, doing her best to catch the driver's attention. But Irwin just kept watching the road despite the temptation. Great, he sighed. Jailbait. Z-Mall leaned forward to look Irwin in the eye. She couldn't believe what a cliché he was. The plaid work shirt, the baseball cap, even the thick mustache. He was totally homo. She blew him a kiss. It's only jailbait if you touch it, breaker buddy. The trucker tightened his grip on the large steering wheel. Are you crazy? No, purred Z-Mall. I'm from Seattle. That's a heck of a long way to hitch, isn't it? Said Irwin, blowing the horn of his truck as if to let some pressure out of the cab. Trick shouted over the noise. What are you waiting for, Slap Attack? Go on, take a look. She can't hold out like that all day. Who says I can't? Snapped the girl. Well, what about Frink Park? Whined Trick accusingly. It was January, she said. I had a thermal blanket, the boy protested. As the two of them bickered, Irwin peeked at Z-Mall's punk bra, just like she'd invited him to do. Sweet almighty Christ, even though the leather, he could tell she had nipple rings. All right, that's enough, she said, lowering her tank. She must have seen him at the corner of her eye. That's for the ride, okay? Irwin cursed under his breath and returned his attention to the blacktop. Maybe, just maybe, he was getting old after all. 38, and these kids were killing it. This was all just fun to them, and now he had a heart-on he didn't know what to do with. You can look at my dick if you want, offered Trick. That did the job. Bill's pants tent hit the deck. Half an hour later, and the rolling panes had been replaced by miles of dense forest. A body of trees dissected at crucial points by dirt tracks, leading to places of threatening seclusion. They lumbered past roadsides Irwin knew by heart, but which led to townships and settlements he had never been to. Their names were merely measuring points along his regular route beneath shadowy green canopy. To the kids, however, the signs spoke of locations that suggested pumpkin-headed knife men committing slaughter to heavy metal music. Bennington Glen, boring. New Hope, not bad. Millwood, perfect. The Millwood Maniac, the Millwood Machete Killer. Like Trick said, the places gotta have a rhythm or they don't work. It was clear to Irwin that the boy was never going to shut up. He looked ridiculous in that outfit. Long cotton duster, frayed jeans, a torn tee, and a pair of knee-high combat boots with side buckles and front padding. All black, of course. His head shaved, but for a black buzz up top. Trick seemed to see himself as 50% Jesse James, 50% Count Dracula. But to Bill, he was 100% Prick. The kids were pierced as well. Brows, tongues, noses, ears, Zemal's nipples. How far is it? The abrupt question startled Irwin out of his black leather daydream. Was that? He mumbled. It was Glow. She'd taken a map out of her backpack and was studying it. How far to the crossroads? She asked quietly. We must be getting close. And they were. Irwin had picked the kids up sometime around 5. And it was now, he glanced at his clock, 20 before 6. Funny how one noisy kid could make 40 minutes seem like 14 hours. Zemal grabbed the map out of Glow's hand and started to fold it back up. Ignore her, she told Irwin. She's just having a Velma attack. Hey, fuck no, Trick countered. If we're close, I want to know. I've waited my whole life to come here. Where? Asked Bill. Camp Crystal Lake? The kids fell silent and glanced nervously at one another. Again, Bill couldn't help but be in awe of how fantastic Zemal looked. Okay, she was a little too Addams Family, but with her long black hair flowing down to her waist, she... How'd you know we were going to Crystal Lake? Asked Glow hesitantly. For the first time since he'd taken the 3 smart mouths on board, Irwin sensed he had an advantage. Payback time. So you think you're the first set of Boris Karloff rejects to come sniffing around old Camp Blood, do ya? What's he saying, Trick? Whined Zemal. Don't worry, babe, answered the boy. Slappy's just yanking our chain. No way, said Irwin, shouting the boy down. I've seen it all before. Kids like you with your Charlie Manson t-shirts and this whole Undertaker deal. I bet you got a mountain of videos back home. Tapes on the Crystal Lake Massacre. Jason Voorhees. I bet you got all the books and periodicals. Don't forget the action figures, quipped Trick, but his joke fell flat. Besides, he really did have a Jason Voorhees action figure. It was standing right next to his plastic models of Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, and good old Ed Gein. And each figure had an amazing 36 points of articulation. Oh, but Glow, on the other hand, wasn't so ready to ignore Bill's sarcasm. It's not what you think, she replied. Is that so? Said Irwin. 25 years ago, a whole lot of people got killed, and you come here dressed like Count Chocula in diapers, looking for where some innocent folks got slaughtered. You got your camcorders with you, got your cell phones with your digital zoom. Each and every one of Irwin's bullets found their mark. He could see Glow getting more and more riled. For a moment it seemed she was about to erupt. Instead, she just sat back and muttered, You wouldn't understand. Bill understood all right, but there was something about Glow's manner that made him think twice, because the minute he'd mentioned Crystal Lake, she had come over all serious. She seemed nothing at all like her friends, and Bill got the distinct feeling she was holding something back. He took a closer look at her. Her skater pants had enough cloth in them to roof Soldier Field. How the hell didn't she trip up in them? But at least she had the sense to be wearing a decent pair of trail boots. Her beat-up biker's jacket was a good call, too. But her hair? A crow's nest of bottle black with long, mousy roots hanging down from the kind of center parting normally reserved for mental patients. Come on, Slapfest. Trick reached over and patted the driver on the shoulder. Don't kill the Atmos. There was a metal squill and a sudden hiss of air pressure as the massive wheels of the semi rolled to a halt. It was a couple hours before sundown, and the truck was now deep in the heart of the woods. The junction wasn't marked. There were no signs or directions of any kind. There was just the road they'd come in on, and a dirt trail heading north and south. Everything else was forest. They'd arrived at the crossroads. The last part of the journey had passed in uncomfortable silence, but that didn't stop Bill helping the kids down from the cab. He'd reached up for Glow and almost got tangled in her pants as he clumsily lowered her to the ground. Then he went back for Trick, but the boy giggled and jumped straight out of the truck. However, it was only when Bill took hold of Zemal and felt the way she was snaking her hips that he realized what an idiot he'd been. Although Zemal and Sneakers stood taller than any of them, she was still only a dumb school kid. They were all only dumb school kids, and now they were about to go off on some lunatic pilgrimage. Bill considered the situation for a moment, and then came to a decision. He knew they wouldn't listen, but at least he had to try. "Listen," he said earnestly, "I don't live round here, but I know the people of Wessex County are sick of freaks and wackos coming out and treating the whole goddamn forest like a Jason Voorhees theme park. If the cops get one look at you, they'll run you out of the county. And if they do, you'll be lucky, because if the locals find you, I swear to God they'll beat the shit out of you." "Great pep talk, Slappy," answered Trick, lending a hand to Zemal as she put on her backpack. "Well, here's the headline, Slappy. We're not going anywhere near town. This is a woods-only operation." "Dressed like that? Do you know how cold it can get out here, boy?" Irwin tried to reason with Zemal. "Are you going to go walking through the bushes and all the scrub and poisonous plants in that mini?" Zemal snickered and latched onto Trick's arm. It was Glow who answered the question. "I've taken a course in outdoor skills. I don't care if you've joined the fucking SEALs," snapped Bill. "This forest covers hundreds of square miles. Hardly anyone lives out here. There are bears, snakes. You're just 3 kids fooling around without proper equipment. What you going to do if you come across any burrs? Now, if you listen to me, you'll get back in the truck." Trick raised a hand. "Don't be a slapophobe. We're not as dumb as we look. We know what we're doing." It was obvious Bill wouldn't get through to the boy, so he looked at Zemal. She just buried her face in Trick's shoulder and giggled. As for Glow, she wasn't paying attention to any of them anymore. She just stood by the edge of the road and gazed into the woods, preoccupied. "Well," said the trucker, giving up, "don't say I didn't warn you." "I'll give Jason your regards," laughed Trick. Bill stopped and looked the boy straight in the eye. "I really hope you do, son. I really hope you do." Then he walked back round to the driver's side of the cab and climbed back up behind the steering wheel. Outside, Trick and Zemal burst out laughing. The boy began to jeer at the gleaming chromium tractor. "Jason's gonna get me! Jason's gonna get me! Screw you, Cluster Slap!" Irwin slammed the door and ignited the engine. He peered through the windshield. Nothing but trees and a long, empty road. He looked back through the mirrors. Nothing but trees and a long, empty road. Not another vehicle in sight. "Dumb fucking kids," he muttered, then put his foot on the gas. The rumble of the diesel-powered machinery echoed one last of civilization as the vehicle pulled away, severing the umbilical cord between the city and this wild wood of isolation. A few seconds later, and Trick, Glow, and Zemal were alone. 3 tiny figures standing shoulder to shoulder, stranded in the sylvan gloom. "Thank fuck he's gone," said Trick. Deep inside those same woods, a fawn nervously tiptoed into a small clearing and then stopped. There was an unfamiliar scent in the air. The young deer raised its head to see whether the odor indicated any kind of threat. Unfortunately, this was the first time the creature had come into contact with the stench of human excrement. And yes, the odor did indicate a threat, a very real threat. "Get him!" yelled a rasping, high-pitched voice, and 2 figures burst out from their hiding place, behind a clump of bushes. Even if the deer had seen humans before, it would never have seen anyone like Francis and Enoch Grissom. These 2 filthy inbred brothers, aged somewhere between 30 and 130, wore their shit and piss-stained rags like a second skin. We're talking about 2 guys who never undressed, never took a wash, who didn't believe in shaving, and who sucked the tart shit juice out of their dental cavities on religious grounds. And they never combed the head lice out of their hair because the itchy critters made a tasty snack 24/7. The little bastards just kept multiplying, and you didn't have to pay a cent for them. It was Francis who'd shouted out, the short, thin, wiry one. but you wouldn't believe he was the younger of the two brothers. It was because he was mostly bald, a beat-up astronaut's helmet of long brown pubes that seemed to float 2 inches away from his scalp. Francis moved with the poise and sophistication of a lobster that had just been thrown into the boiling pot. He dived forward, arms akimbo, and flailing. But the fawn easily leapt out of harm's way, and Francis got himself a face full of leaves, and some raccoon shit. "God damn it, damn fuck, god damn!" He beat the dirt with his fist. "Don't you go worrying," called his brother as he moved to cut off the deer's escape. The elder Grissom was just as wretched as his brother, but easily 3 times the weight. Wherever Enoch went, his hooch gut went first, wobbling inside his filthy burlap shirt like a hot sack of puke. He too was bald, but only on top. Everywhere else his hair was as thick and as dark as a squaw's bush. At least that was how he liked to describe it. He could grow a real beard too. He didn't have a so's pussy full of face fuzz like his scrawny kid brother. Francis crawled to his feet and shouted some encouragement. "Don't let him get away, Mantis!" Enoch stopped, reaching for the deer, and stood upright. "How many times have I gotten to tell you? Don't call me Mantis." "Well, you lose the fuckers and I'll shut in the fuck up, man-tits." "Don't call me man-tits. Man-tits, man-tits, fucking man-tits." "I told you." Enoch ran forward to grab his younger brother by the throat, but stopped when Francis pointed over his shoulder and cried out, "Bambi, he's fucking hoofing it!" Quickly, the two of them set aside their differences and lurched in chaotic pursuit. They should have been no match. The fawn was young, nimble, and frightened, but it didn't know the terrain and mistakenly went springing out into the open shoreline of Crystal Lake. Behind it were 2 slabs of human detritus out foraging. In front was a lake where almost 50 years ago a young boy nearly drowned. "Got you, you furry little bastard!" Enoch wrapped his big hands around the willowy stalk of the deer's neck. The fawn struggled and grunted. It kicked in terror, desperate to be set free. But Enoch wrestled the creature to the ground and used his obese, sweating flesh to keep it there. "Well, go on," he called up to his brother. "Killing the fucker already." Francis, named by Ma after the patron saint of animals, scratched one of the boils on his pale scalp and licked the running sores on his lips. This was the part he enjoyed the most. The bit where he got to kill shit. It was even better if he could scare the little bastard in the process. Slowly he stepped forward and placed a foot on the side of the young deer's head. Enoch looked up. "What in the fuck are you getting ready to be doing, Francis?" His brother smiled. "Look and learn, man-tits, look and learn." Then he placed the sole of his battered leather shoe directly over the creature's temple and pushed hard. Down, 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 Francis Grissom trod on the squilling animal's face. The louder the yearling cried, the harder Francis laughed. Enoch labored to hold the thrashing fawn in position. It was a real fight, but when he heard the moist cracking of its skull, he had to look away. He'd rather have put a knife to the creature's throat and have done with it. But his crazy brother... Francis screeched maniacally at the red liquid brain jelly shitting on his shoe. "Who's laughing now, Bambi? Who's fucking laughing now?" "Hey, Glow, wait up!" It was the second time Trick had called to her, but the girl still wouldn't slow down. What was wrong with her? The truck had barely started moving when Glow had just taken off, marching straight into the woods. Zemal had tried walking with her, arm-linked with Trick's, but it had been impossible. There was too much green stuff, and the ground was totally up and down. So she just did her best to stay close. "Let her go," she said dismissively. "I don't want her around when we fuck." "Oh!" laughed Trick. "When's that?" "As soon as I get my clothes off," smiled Zemal, and she immediately came to a halt. "No, don't," said Trick, grabbing hold of her hand and pulling her along. "We've got a long way to go, and we'll never make it without her. She's got the whole fat thing going on." But Zemal wasn't done. "That driver said the lake's hundreds of miles long," she moaned. "That doesn't work for me." "Square miles, math queen," shouted Trick, but his answer only made Zemal frown. It was bad enough she had to concentrate on where to put her feet, with all the roots and plants. She'd already stubbed her toe on a rock, and they'd only been walking 10 minutes. Trick ran forward, took hold of Glow's shoulders, and spun her around. He was surprised by the stern look on her face, her shoulders all bunched up. "Hey, Glow, what's up?" he asked. "Where you going?" The short girl seemed confused. She just started to stare at Trick in silence. He tried again. "You're not even using a map. We made a plan, remember?" Which would have astounded anyone who knew these kids back home. Not even their parents would have credited them with being able to put any kind of strategy together, unless it meant skipping school or fooling around. But it was because Trick and the two girls had made the painful effort to do things properly that they'd had to hitch all the way over from Washington. They couldn't afford plane seats because they'd sunk all their money into equipment. A stack of USGS maps, a digital camcorder, 3 flashlights, new cell phones, a handheld GPS receiver, a first aid pack, and a heap of other useful stuff that had been shared out across their 3 backpacks. They'd also pulled their allowances to pay for Glow to take an outdoor skills course, all of which, if her behavior right now was anything to go by, she'd completely forgotten. "You can't just go out there," said Trick. "Slapmaster Flash was right. It is dangerous." No response. "Glow!" Suddenly the tension seemed to pour out of the girl's body. Her shoulders relaxed, her brow lifted, and she offered an apologetic smile. "Sorry," she said, cutely biting her bottom lip. Brain fade. "It's that fucking truck of Alcatraz," smiled Trick. "It did me too." "So, which way now?" asked Zemal. "I need to go for a leak." Glow took off her pack and pulled out a map. 1/24,000th scale was absolutely essential for this kind of walking. But when Zemal glanced at the unfolded sheet, all she saw was a large square of green print. "Useful much?" she sniped. "Leave the navigation to the experts, babe," bragged Trick. "Me and Glow got everything covered. She's got the contours, and I," he said, pulling a small blue gizmo out of his pocket, "got the GPS. No fucking Blair Witch for us, man." Enoch trudged along the footpath, dragging the dead fawn behind him. He tied some twine round its front legs and was holding it in his coarse right hand. The creature's black legs were left to slip and buckle in its cadaverous wake. A few yards ahead of Enoch was the big oak where earlier he and his brother had left their sacks, just before they'd spotted the deer. Francis was there now, rifling through the rough bags, checking on the day's kill. "Don't fucking leave me a-carrying everything," shouted Enoch. "We don't got enough meat," answered Francis. Enoch let the fawn drop and stomped over to take a look. Both of the sacks were filled with snuff wildlife, birds, rodents, raccoons, everything they'd collected from all their snares and traps, along with the poisonous snake Francis had bitten. "What in the fucking fuck do you mean?" snapped Enoch. "The bags are full anyways." He nodded in the direction of the skull-crushed fawn. "I thought you'd want to spend some time with your new friend." Francis sprang forward, whipped a knife out from under his rags, and pushed the tip of the blade up into Enoch's jaw. The knife was made of hand-carved bone. "What you talking about, man tits?" he said, but Enoch was unimpressed. "You gotten yourself a Bambi to fuck. Don't think I don't know what you're a-thinking." "Why?" Francis pushed the knife tip further, but still not piercing the skin. "I'm thinking I ought to cutting you right open." "Yeah." Enoch headbutted Francis square in the face and sent his brother reeling backwards. As he stumbled, Francis slashed at the air with his knife, making it easy for Enoch to reach out and grab hold of his brother's arm, bringing it down hard on his knee. Francis dropped the blade and yelped, "You're not fighting fair, you dirty fat fuck!" "Fight fair?" huffed Enoch, grabbing his spindly brother in a headlock. "You want to fight fair?" The two of them were grunting and panting, Enoch forcing his brother's head lower and lower until it was held down by his waist. Seriously, Francis shifted his weight, unbalancing his older brother, and dived forward. Enoch released his brother and screamed, "Bastard! You gone bitten me in the fucking cock!" Francis laughed, reached down for a handful of dirt, and threw it in his brother's eyes. Then, while Enoch was blinded, unsure whether to rub his stinging eyes or grab his aching nuts, Francis looked for the thickest branch he could find and then whacked Enoch hard on the back of the head. Enoch dropped to his knees and Francis got ready for a second strike. "Scream for me, man tits!" he raved, but his older brother wasn't done yet. His eyes weeping, his balls smarting, Enoch stood up, threw his arms wide, and bellowed. The noise reverberated through the trees with primeval stupidity. "Oh, shit!" Francis intoned with a look of panic in his eyes. "Enoch's gone getting ready to fucking haze!" Francis was about to run for his life when he saw something on the ground, something they hadn't seen earlier, and stopped. But Enoch was still in the grip of an unquenchable fury. He bellowed a second time and ran forward for the kill. "No!" cried Francis. Too late. Enoch crashed into Francis and slammed him into the trunk of an ancient pine. "God damn it, Enoch!" The pain in Francis's ribs was unbearable. Flecks of blood appeared on his lips, but Enoch was beyond reason, completely berserk. He threw Francis down onto the ground, the impact causing his brother to cry out even louder. More blood trickled out of Francis's mouth. But now he had a chance because his brother had body-slammed him down next to... Francis held out a shaking hand, fingers stretched wide to stave off the blow. "No!" he whimpered. "Look, Enoch, look!" He pointed to the ground. "Footprints, Enoch! Human footprints!" Enoch, his chest rising and falling, his fist held ready, stood over his beaten brother. His mouth was filled with the saliva foam of hyperventilation. His eyes almost completely white, but slowly, finally, Francis could see the change. His brother was calming down. "Just look," he said, pointing again at the tracks. "There's somebody out here with us, Enoch." "All I'm saying," said Trick again, "is that if we find an original Camp Crystal Lake sign, it's mine. End of story." "And all I'm saying," said Glow, "is you can have it. I don't want any of that shit. I just want to see where it all happened." Trick couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Don't you even want any pictures for your website?" "Well, sure," answered Glow hesitantly. "But look, you're the boss here, okay? If you want stuff, it's yours." "All right," said Trick, making her a final offer. 50-50, but I get the sign, okay? Zemal sighed. "What the fuck is wrong with you, Helen Keller? She said you can have it all." "You don't get it, babe," he explained. "Anytime Glow agrees with me, it means she's totally up to some serious mind juju." They'd been walking for a couple of hours now, and the sun was getting low. Worse, Zemal's feet ached, and she was sick of the smell of pine. But what really got her pissed was the humidity, all that plant vapor caused by the warmth. "Are you sure you know where we're going?" she asked for the 1000th time. Glow double-checked her map against the GPS Trick had given her. "I'm absolutely positive. I got the location of the original camp from an old promotional brochure. That stuff's worth a fortune now. And I've checked with dozens of other sources. I know exactly where I'm going. A lot of people get confused between Camp Crystal Lake and Camp Forest Green, but I've taken care of that." "Yeah, right," mumbled Zemal, puzzled. "It's easy." It was Trick's turn to strut his Voorhees stuff. "I got this. After Pamela went nuts in 1980, they closed the old place down, but in 85... 87, corrected Glow. 87, the local economy was so fucked they built another camp close to the original, and the new camp was Forest Green. 'Cause no one wanted their kids to vacation at the scene of a bloodbath?" guessed Zemal. "Absolutely," Glow confirmed. "But then Jason attacked Forest Green in 88, so they tore the place down in 93. "After the CIA," said Trick. "The FBI," amended Glow. Fucked up their ambush." "But the original camp is still out here someplace," Glow continued. "A construction company was hired a few years ago to pull it down to make way for some luxury apartments. But guess what?" "The man came along," answered Trick and all, "and wiped every fucking hard hat off the face of the planet." Zemal stared at the self-satisfied pair with a deadpan expression. You two should just get married." "No, listen," said Trick hurriedly. "Jason Voorhees is the ultimate killing machine. Forget Zodiac, forget DeSalvo. Jason's the man. He's a megaton psycho bitch. No one can stop him. They've been trying for years, but he just keeps coming back, waiting until he's ready to strike, and then wham! 20, 30, 40 dead motherfuckers all in one night. And we're looking for him? Gulped Z-Maul. Glow shook her head. Don't listen, Z. I've read everything that's ever been written about Jason, and the only thing people know about him is they don't know anything. No one knows what's real and what's bullshit. I've got a book full of copies of official reports released under Freedom of Information, and even they don't make sense. Yeah, laughed Trick. Only because every cop who goes after Jason winds up dead before they can fill out the fucking paperwork. You try filling a rap sheet when some fucker's got his machete up your ass. Is Jason really that powerful? Asked Z-Maul, trying to mask what looked like a horny grin. Way beyond, beamed Trick. Jason is the big bad you don't want to fuck with. He can snap your neck with a click of his fingers and you wouldn't know who the fuck he was because of his hockey mask. You just hear his breathing, like this. Trick's heavy breathing sounded more like an obscene phone call. Wow, gasped Z-Maul. Look, I really have to go for a leak. The girl skipped away, searching for a bush large enough to give her some urgently needed privacy. While she was gone, Trick nodded at the USGS map in Glow's hands. Is the camp on there? He asked excitedly. No, I tried to get an older edition, but no joy. But I know where it is. I got it marked. You really are the fucking queen, you know that? Glow blushed. Thanks. Trick quickly changed the subject. What kind of name is Voorhees, anyways? Dutch, said Glow. They were the first Europeans to come to New Jersey. Early 17th century. Wow, cool. And how far are we from the camp? The sun finally dipped below the mountainous horizon. Glow checked her map. I'd say another couple of miles. Come over here. What for? Asked Glow. What? Said Trick. You just told me to come over, said the girl. Bullshit. I just asked how far away the camp is. Glow frowned and called over to the bushes. Want something, Z? No, quit it, came the impatient reply. Glow looked all around, but saw nothing except dense woodland taking on a darker hue, with the gradual onset of night. Well, fuck me, fuck my dog, declared Enoch, rubbing a grimy hand through his beard. What you reckon? Asked Francis, kneeling beside the tracks and dabbing them with his fingers. 230? 240 at least, said Enoch. Francis stood up. Big fucker! The footprint seemed to go only a few yards before heading into a carpet of stinging nettles. I reckon, said Enoch, glancing furtively in the direction of the prints. I don't want no folks snooping round our house. They ain't got no business with Ma and Pa. What if it's the law? Asked Francis. You know better than that, said Enoch. Those cops and two chicken shit to come out here. Reckon it's a fucking tourist hunting or something. Hunting? Francis nodded his head. Ain't no hunters round here except you and me, he continued. But I ain't going through no fucking stingers. Shit, his brother warned, putting a filthy finger to his lips. Even with the taste of blood from his last defeat still fresh in his mouth, Francis wasn't about to start taking orders. Don't you fucking shush me, you man-tip fuck. Quick, down, hissed Enoch, talking faster than he ever had. Francis stooped low and tried to see who or what his brother had spotted, which was just where Enoch wanted him. He pulled his leg right back, aimed his foot, then attempted a 50-yard field goal straight up Francis's ass. Francis screamed and went flying forward into the vast bed of nettles, where he abruptly vanished from view. He didn't even cry out in pain. Francis? Silence. Quit your fooling around now, Enoch said, but nothing. Expecting his brother to get up and attack him at any moment, Enoch took a cautious step forward. He could see the footprints. He could see the nettles. But, Enoch, came an urgent voice, getting the fuck down here. It was Francis, but where the hell was he? Enoch ran straight into the bushes, and suddenly he found himself falling down a steep embankment into a pit formed during a recent landslide. Over the previous week, torrential rains had turned most of the area into a quagmire. The ground had hardened since then, but in some places the earth had given way. Enoch landed with a dull thud at the bottom of the newly created basin, his head banging against a peak of hardened mud. When the stars cleared, Enoch saw that his brother was still on all fours, gawking like a dog at the very same slope they'd both just fallen down. Because there, standing upright in the sunset gloom, trapped half in and half out of the solidified dirt, was the giant body of a man, his legs and hands poked through the mud face in a cartouche of defiance. "Must have been caught in the landslide," whispered Francis. "Yeah," hissed Enoch. "Looks like he tried and claw his way out. Big fucker, ain't he?" But the figure's astonishing height, easily approaching 7 feet, wasn't his most distinctive feature. Nor was the fact he must have been incredibly strong to have stayed on his feet beneath the cascade of sludge. No, the most remarkable thing about the dead man locked in the earth was that his face was completely hidden behind the mud-stained plastic of a hockey mask. Okay, this has been Chapter 1 of Friday the 13th Carnival of Maniacs. Very interesting cast of characters we have so far. I may have gone a little overboard on the inbred brothers, but I'm just trying to do what the book described them as and the way their dialogue was written. Hope you guys have enjoyed this first chapter. Hope you're still hyped for the rest of the book. I'll be back very soon with another chapter or two of Friday the 13th Carnival of Maniacs. Until then, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80 slasher librarian saying thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.